Don't be scared. Always, my whole life, I always considered, a job was, I'm just a number to them and they're just a number to you. So if you're not happy in your job, like start to think about like, what is it that you're passionate about? Like step into that like get through the fear, get out of your comfort zone. That's really when you can make that impact. That's when you're stepping into your purpose, I think.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your host, Richard Coyne, and on today's show, we're so pleased to have Erik Allen with us. Erik, welcome.
Man, Richard, thank you so much for having me on the show. Truly an honor to be here, man.
Absolutely. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for being on the Road Less Traveled Show. So, Erik, if you would kind of give a little bit of your background, kind of tell us a little bit about kind of what you used to do, your former career and things like that, just kind of help us understand a little bit more about you.
Sure. Yeah. Did mostly retail in my early days, got into Starbucks, worked for them for 5 years, and then jumped over to sales and customer success, post-sales, account management stuff for the last 20 years. And it's been a fun journey, ups and downs. Sometimes eat like kings and sometimes eat top ramen, but it's been a fun journey.
All right. Good deal. Good deal. So what is it you've kind of transitioned into now, and maybe just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So I was planning at the beginning of, or I guess last quarter of 2023, I was getting into life insurance. I was recruited by a company to go out and work for those guys. Really excited to get into that. Passed my exam, got all that taken care of, was planning to just do it part-time. And then I was part of a 500 plus person layoff in the beginning of December last year. And so I just took it as a God thing, said, hey, you need to be doing this full-time. So that's what I've been doing since. And it's been a fun journey. And, always when you're starting something new, it's always a kick in the teeth sometimes, but you just battle through that and you keep going. But it's been a fun ride, man.
So the life policies that you're offering are for individuals, is that right?
Correct. Yep. So we work with individuals, mortgage protection, things like that. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum where when my grandfather passed, he didn't believe in insurance, and my grandma was forced to move out of her house and downgrade and all that stuff. And then I've seen on the other end where, when my father-in-law passed, he did have some insurance and we were able to pay for his funeral. Right. And so I definitely feel like I can relate with both ends when I'm talking with people who are like not sure about this insurance thing. And then people are like, oh yeah, I do believe in that. Right. And so it's been a fun transition for sure.
Gotcha. So mortgage protection, that obviously sounds to me like, if you die, then your heirs are protected in terms of having the mortgage be paid off by the life insurance. Is that right?
Yep. You could do a full mortgage, or you could do like a partial mortgage payment to pay off things like that. Or if you just wanted to just do like, hey, I just want my funeral expenses taken care of. I don't want my family or, any debts, etc. Essentially, when you pass, the debts and the mortgage and stuff like that, we take care of that. So when you work with us, we set you up on an appropriate plan that would make sure that your family isn't in a bunch of need at the end.
Okay. So is it intended that it covers just those things, or is it intended that it gives you $1 million and then you pay what benefit, what debt needs to be paid out of that?
Yeah, so you can do either or. We have lots of options. I'm a broker, so I work with 30 plus different carriers out there. And so we have lots of options. Most of them are instant approvals. And so we work directly with a lot of carriers that have that instant, hey, you know what, 55 years old, 45 years old, like, boom, I can get that approval in a matter of 30 seconds most times.
Okay, gotcha. Now, are those considered whole policies or term?
Both. So we can do term and whole. We do have some. If you go a little bit higher in the whole life, there probably is some more detailed underwriting and stuff like that we would need to do. But yes, we do term at whole. I also can do annuities and things like that. So
okay, gotcha. All right, that sounds that's great. So, can you think back to your prior days? I don't know whether it was in the sales side, when it was at Starbucks. Can you think of a funny story, something that happened to you a while back?
Oh man. It's always funny when you're working at Starbucks because you just get characters, and, I worked there for 5 years. I knew everybody's drink. I didn't know anybody's name. It was just one of those things that when they walked in, I already had their drink making, but I had no idea what their name was because I just was a bad, I guess, person. I didn't ask for the name. Now looking back, I'm like, why didn't I ask for the name? Like, but I love Starbucks. There was one time a girl had walked in and we had just removed the carpet from the floor. So it was just this concrete covering. And she was a very pretty girl. And she said, hey, you know what? I really miss the blank or the carpet you guys used to have. And I was like a night manager. And at this time I was doing a lot of drugs, and I was like, oh yeah, just write a letter or whatever, and let it be. Well, that girl about a month later asked me if I wanted to go to a church event. And 11 months later we were married, and we've been married for 19 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, how you like that? How you like that? So, wow, it's interesting how people meet their spouse, and
Right.
you know, I've got a few stories. I don't know that I'll go into it here, but
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely an interesting story for myself. But that's pretty cool. So she knows the carpet difference, and you know, so you wind up you know, dating, and get married. Holy Moses, 19 years now. Congratulations.
19 years. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We were both born at 1:41 p.m. Different days, different years, but the exact same minute on our birth certificate. So it's pretty crazy.
That's funny. Wow.
Yeah.
So what was the kind of deciding factor? I guess Eric, you mentioned the company did a layoff, so that certainly is a
Yeah.
little kind of push out the door. But was there you
Sure.
mentioned you were kind of already thinking about, you know, going in this direction. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit, if you would, please?
Yeah, totally. I like to be challenged in work. And I would say swag is not really a challenging career. I mean, it can be in certain roles, but I was post sales where my job was to grow the accounts. And I did that very successfully in that role. I was an employee number 18 with the company when they started, and so loved it, but it wasn't pushing me mentally. Like I loved
Hmm.
it. I could do it in my sleep, but I really wanted to, one, increase my knowledge. I wanted to increase my sales. They also put a cap on me. So if I
Hmm.
did really well on a quarter, they would drop my commission from a 4% to a 1%. And it was just drove me nuts. I was like, oh, this is crazy. And I had a friend who's been in the insurance industry for the last 13 years. And he had reached out and said, man, I think you do really well in this. If you want to work with me directly, let's make it happen. And it just kind of piqued my interest. So I talked to my wife about it and I said, hey, it's going to be a tough go. I'll do it part time while I'm doing this,
Hmm.
and then we can get started. And so it was that pull that really wanted me to go and have the freedom. One, I don't want to have to ask for permission if I have to go to my kids' play in the middle of the day or go to a baseball game early with my
Hmm.
son. Right, like I want that freedom, and so that was that pursue that real purpose for me to step away from the W-2 in the first place or start thinking about that.
Okay. All right. So again, swag is hats, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff that companies do for promotional purposes and all. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I would say
Okay.
we were different than like you just walking up and saying, "Hey, I have a family reunion. I need 20 shirts." We focused
Uh-huh.
on businesses. So we
Gotcha.
would say, "Hey, you can store everything in this warehouse and you just tell us when you want us to send it to an event and then you can send it back," type stuff.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the layoff. Was it that they, you know, as that company had been acquired, they laid off people right then, or was it that they brought you on house and then they hit a rub in the business?
Yeah, I think they just started to see a decline. I think
Okay.
when budgets get cut with companies and in the
Yeah.
economy and things like that, the first things that we see go is swag and marketing, right? So like
Right.
us
Right.
being in the swag industry, we saw a lot of customers really start to pull their budget on necessarily on swag. And that swag could be for new hires, could be for, VIP customers or events, but you really started to see that budget start to
Hmm.
decline. And like I said, I've been with them for almost 4 years. And even some of my customers I worked with the entire 4 years, their budget slowly got less and less each year.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, those are the kind of things, like you said, when it kind of gets tight, companies stop spending money on the optional things
Right.
like swag, but also that sort of, to me, reinforces the fact that there's pain in the economy. And even though
Yeah.
certain people like to think there's everything's fat, dumb, and happy, rosy, and you know, the Fed certainly sees inflation. You know, wait a second. You're seeing companies cut back. You're seeing jobs be eliminated.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is not a great economy we're in. And you know, unfortunately, you got the short end of that. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you came out, and that was because we were preparing for something else. So to kind of drive toward the license, the insurance side, you had to go get
Yeah.
the license. Is that right?
I did. Yep. I had to go get a license. I had to go take a test, pass an exam, work with some mentors. In Idaho, you don't have to have like 50 or 60 hours of
Okay.
pre-licensing. Like it's just you have to study for the test. You go down and take the test and call
Okay.
it good. And I was licensed in Washington way back in 2007, and
Okay.
it wasn't very good. I wasn't a mature person in my early 20s at that time, and so that was a big flop. But so I really kind of had this. I love the insurance to be able to help people, and I know
Hmm.
that insurance sometimes gets a bad rap, but I want to change that
Yeah.
idea of what insurance really looks like.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. So as you were kind of really ramping up your involvement in the insurance side, were
Yep.
there some obstacles you had to overcome?
Yeah, one, I hate taking tests. So like studying tests for me is really tough. But I went into this thing, I studied really well. I passed it the first time. I'm studying for a second license now,
Hmm.
just to get a little bit more into the health and medical side of things.
Hmm.
But for me, that was a challenge. Number two, the challenge was learning a new thing. Anytime that you go into a new environment, a new job, you have to relearn everything. And
Hmm.
I'm 44, so learning new things, like I'm probably going to be learning some new things. And so
Yeah.
getting into insurance again, it was like, okay, what are these sales scripts? Like, how should my tone be? What's my pace when I talk? Like, what questions should I be asking people? Right. So I don't come across as salesy, but really genuinely wanting to be authentic and help
Hmm.
them. And so it was a lot of dials. It was a lot of like hangups. It was a lot of like, I'm not interested, or like, why are you calling me? Like that type of stuff. And you
Hmm.
just have to battle through that. And you're going to weed out those and you'll get to more comfortable on your scripts. You'll get more comfortable on your calls and be able to help more people the more that you do it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So how are you doing lead generation? Are you really kind of out cold calling, or is there an engine that helps you out with that? How's that work?
Yeah. Great question. So I do warm leads. This like people that I know, right? Like, hey, I'd love to, take a look at your current policy, see how I can help you. Also, the company that I work for, they specifically have a huge team that generates leads specifically for agents within the country in the
Okay.
company.
Okay.
So we buy those leads from corporate office,
Hmm.
and then we can buy leads that are brand new and fresh, or we can buy some older leads that maybe didn't get touched or they
Hmm.
never ended up happening. And so
Hmm.
they're all over the spectrum, but we buy directly from our HQ, and they are specifically sourced from their, it's not third party or anything like that. It's actual people
Hmm.
who said, hey, I am genuinely interested in getting some information on this.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. So what would you say was your kind of your first victory in this new insurance career where you said, yep, this is going to work. I'm going to be able to make a run at this, and this is going to take care of, my needs to go out and help people, as well as obviously generate income for your family. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first win is really getting that first appointment out of the way, right? I think you can, once you get through the yuck, and when I say yuck, it's the like, hey, I'm not interested, or why are you calling me? Like, you get through that stuff, you find that one person who's actually genuinely like, yep, hey, I do remember filling that form out. So it's just getting through that, and
yeah.
that first appointment, that's really the first step to give you the motivation. I think is a lot of folks get in and you don't get anything for a while, and then they want to quit.
Hmm.
And there's a guy that I follow named Cody Askins out there. He's an amazing insurance coach, but he talks about 8%. Only 8% of the people in the insurance industry will actually be successful. 92% people of the people will quit,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to be that statistic. So you just keep fighting, but that first win is that first appointment, right?
Yeah.
And then he can go through, and that gives you the motivation that yep, I can actually do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right, good. So, how about since you've been fully focusing on insurance, is there anything any funny story you can share?
It's interesting. I called a lady the other day, and she was 93 years old, and we got to chatting about her son who had actually filled out the form, but he was a
Mhm.
pilot for a missionary, a mission down in Africa, and he would drive over it, and he was a missionary, drive to different tribes over there, and we got to chatting, and she just loved to talk. So I was like letting her talk, and she was telling me all the stories of when she gave her life to Christ at 13, and she was 93, and her and her husband were missionaries for 60 years, and I just got to tell her a little bit of my story, and it was just a cool conversation. I don't know if it was funny, but it was just like
Mhm.
random person calls her, and she just let it out, and I was like, "Hey, I love this story. Let's hear it." So it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Nice. So if you would kind of touch for a moment, if you're, as much as you're willing to share, just, again, I know
Yeah.
you had a challenging background that kind of got you to where you are in your life now. If you
Yeah.
don't mind, maybe elaborate that on that, and then kind of what I want to, that sort of leads into sort of where do you go from here and what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in I thought was a typical household. Went to Sunday school, played little league, things like that, and I grew up in Eastern Washington State, and my dad would take my best friend Dave and I, still my best friend today, 35 plus years later, but he would take Dave and I, and he would throw us in dumpsters behind stores on a Saturday morning, say, "Go find treasure," and we thought it was just normal, but we're a dumpster diving for treasures and stuff like that, and so I thought I had this typical household, or, life, but my parents were divorced at 11. My mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive almost
Mm,
immediately.
mm,
And there's a moment when I was 13 years old that really changed the trajectory of my life for a long time. They were fighting one night, wasn't anything different. But as I was brushing my teeth, I felt God saying, "Dude, you've got to look around." And so the house was behind me, was the pantry to the garage door. And then I actually had a bedroom in the garage because there was no room for me in the house, is what they told me. And so I looked around the corner, and he was punching her in the face. And so I walked up
ooh,
behind him. I grabbed a cast iron pan, and I swung as hard as I could, and I split the back of his head open. And he turned around and he said, what then? As he did that, he got another smack to the face. Didn't knock him out, but lots of blood. And that night I thought I was the hero. I ended up getting kicked out of that house though by my mom, with 3 months left of my freshman year of high school, and went to live
Mm.
back with my dad in his house in Washington State, and really set me on a path of destruction. So I was getting into drugs and alcohol early. I was arrested at 18 for having drug paraphernalia. I was kicked out of my dad's house 2 weeks after I graduated and moved 21 times between 3 years. I was
Mm.
bankrupt at 21. I was $28,000 in debt, and still battled addictions. Got into the music business and was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week and loved it. And then I got laid off after 1 year anniversary, really set me into a funk. And that's when I was working at Starbucks, and that girl had asked me to a church event, and that really changed my life. And once I gave my life to Christ, it was about a month after I went to that church event and
Mhm.
decided I needed to change the environment. And so I got rid of the party scene, and I found guys in the church that had great lives. They were great businessmen. They, were great husbands, and they had great walks with Christ. And I just took them to Starbucks and said, tell me what you're doing today to do what you do. And it was like pre-podcast days, right? But it was like in
Yeah,
person
yeah.
Starbucks. It was so much fun. And, really that's what got me on the path that I'm on today. Is I started to just make some changes. I realized that my past and other people's opinions of me doesn't define my future, and I
Mhm.
can make a change at any point. And so
Yeah.
once I changed my mindset and said I'm going to start making an impact and not letting my past define me, and my kids will not have to experience what I went through, like that's when I started to make an impact.
Wow. Wow. So what's the future hold? Where do you go from here?
Man, the future holds that my wife and I are, like I said, we've been married 19 years, and together we're breaking the chains of divorce, abuse, addiction, and rejection. And our kids will not have the same, childhood that we had. It's a different legacy for them, right? We're raising our kids much differently, and our kids don't have access to screens. They're not on YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff. Like my daughter's 13, and my son's 10. They've never had their own phones, and they won't get them until they're at least 18. Like we just said,
Hmm.
we don't need screens. We live in a beautiful area. Go outside and play. Like we're bringing back the old school parents. Like, hey, go outside and play. And
Yeah.
of course, we have to be a little bit more concerned. We don't send them out to the streets. They're probably in the backyard, right? But like, they're just living a different lifestyle than I had. And so the future is my wife and I and kids having property and being able to raise future generations of the Allen tribe on that property,
Hmm.
and being able to just change the future generations down the Allen tribe is our goal, and be able to, my wife and I were the ones, right? There was many divorces and craziness before, but we're the ones that are going to put a stop to that, and moving forward, it won't
Hmm.
be the same.
Wow. That's great. Definitely wish you guys well in that. And certainly again, you're so right. I mean, there's, when I think about just the garbage that's on all these phone apps, and
Yeah.
it's just it's one bad thing after another, and even if it is nothing, even put it this way, even if it's not a destructive message or restrictive content that you're looking at, you're still staring at a square box instead of being out there living and being
Yeah.
out there having fun and interacting, being physical. And
Right.
it's so fine, again, you got to use your brain as well as your physical body, but at the same
Yep.
point in time, if you turn into a bunch of couch potatoes, that I think is really what's happening with people, square eyes and being couch potatoes, and
Yeah.
obviously that's not good for your health. And
Right.
and it's, I mean, intellectually fine, okay, challenge your mind, but at the same point in time, you also could do that outside, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
So wow, very cool. So Erik, is there anything that you do either personally or through your business that you can do to give back to help others in some way that you can mention?
Man, I love the giving back, and I think that's a real big focus for my wife and I. I think I give back by I have a podcast called the Erik Allen Show, and we've
Hmm.
done 250 plus episodes on that show. I did 250 on a previous podcast I did, so I've done a little over 500 interviews. But I try to bring on guests that have stories that are going to be related to the listeners. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's not always relating. Where I've had David Meltzer on there who lost $100 million and came back. Most people don't have $100 million that they lost. But the one question that I ask all of my guests, no matter who they are, is tell me about your childhood and where did you grow up?
Hmm.
Because I know that everyone that's ever listened to a podcast, we were all kids once, and we all made choices to get to where we're at. And whether we decide to hold on to that victimhood or we claim victory in this new life, like we get to make a choice. And so I want people to understand that no matter who I have on the show, we were all kids once, and you can make a decision. If you want to go and be the next Ed Milet, or you want to go be the next Nolan Ryan, or, the next football player guy, like go do that. You can choose that, but
Hmm.
leave the
Hmm.
victimhood behind, and start making those changes. And so I try to give back that way. Also financially, my wife and I, we have a fund that we take away from every single money that we come in. Obviously, we do a tithe, but we take an additional percentage and we say, this is just for charity. When we say charity, we mean, hey, if we see someone that maybe they're down on their luck this month, we want to be able to give them with no hesitation. If we see it, we're talking to a waitress and she's like, oh man, yeah, my hours got cut and I got a kid. Like, we want to leave the extra big tip. And so I think we always want to be prepared to give, whether that's time, financially, just speaking like love onto somebody. Like, we always want to be prepared to do that.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. Again, there's, put it this way. If anyone wants to dwell on the negative, there's a million things that went wrong in your past.
Totally.
This person was mean. I had this disadvantage. I had that disadvantage. But again, that's the past. It doesn't define you going forward. And, don't focus on the negative. I believe I certainly am a very glasses half full type person.
Yeah.
And again, I hate it when people play the victim card. It's just like, oh, woe is me, woe is me. All right, again, I understand bad stuff happens. But let's not dwell on it. Try to move forward, and let's focus on a positive development to move you forward. So, good for you in that aspect. So, very
Thank
nice.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, is there anything you recently have implemented that's helping you grow your business, your insurance business?
One is being consistent and time blocking. So that's something that I've always tried to say, hey, I'm big on my calendar, and if it's not on my calendar, then it doesn't get done. And so I was kind of like loosey goosey when I first started, like, oh yeah, I'll do dials this hour, or I'll do research on this hour. But once I actually put it on my calendar, like, this is the dial hour, and this is the research hour, and this is when you can work on exam stuff. Like, putting it into my calendar was a game changer for me. And I'm big on sticking to it. If it's on my calendar, I'm all about it. And so that was one thing that I really had to implement. I also write down my goals a lot more. So every morning I review over my goals. I had a guy named Craig Ballantyne on my show one time, and he talked about the perfect day formula is his book. And, it's really like the night before you go to bed, write down your to-do list for the first thing in the morning. So when you get up, it's already there, right? You're not trying to go, okay, what am I doing today? And so I started implementing that as well. And those things have really helped me kind of just stay laser focused on making sure my productivity is up where it needs to be.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
So, Erik, what advice would you share with somebody who's considering making a path change?
Ooh, don't be scared. I was scared for a really long time. Obviously you got to be smart so that you're not just like, hey, wife, I'm quitting my job. And like, if you don't have anything lined up, don't do that. But like, start thinking about, like, if you're not happy in your job. I've always my whole life, I always considered, a job was, I'm just a number to them and they're just a number to you. So if you're not happy in your job, like, start to think about, like, what is it that you're passionate about? I love talking with people. I'm passionate about podcasting. I'm passionate about hearing people's stories and sharing my story and hopefully making an impact. And so I think if you're feeling that urge in your life where you're like, man, I need to make a change, be smart about it, but like, don't let over preparation hold you back. Like, once you have this inkling, step into that. And I think that's where we grow, is like, we get out of our comfort zone. Right. And I've had to make that choice, in the last couple of years, but like, I held on. I was too, I would say, selfish. I just didn't want to get out of that role because I had this constant income flowing, and it took me a really long time to get over that comfort zone. So I think if you're trying to get out, like, step into that get through the fear, get out of your comfort zone. That's really when you can make that impact. That's when you're stepping into your purpose, I think.
Yeah, very well said. So, one of the things we talk about quite frequently is that, again, maybe you love your W-2 job.
Yeah,
that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Do well for your family, do well for the company. But at the same point in time, we always kind of advise the people to say, listen, think about something else, another stream of income in some capacity, just because, again, you never know. Yeah. I mean, there's zero loyalty from employers to employees, and quite honestly, vice versa, employees to employers. Totally. It's a free market there. And again, we know we're in a challenging economic time. So, I feel like you develop another stream of income, you got a little bit of a safety net. And again, you do some sort of investing along the way, whether that be in, if all you have access to is stocks and 401k, hey, that's still better than nothing. Do something. But at the same point in time, we also like the alternative assets, real estate, et cetera. As a strategy. And again, you don't need to be a millionaire to invest in real estate. So anyway, well said. So Erik, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you to see what you're up to and see more about you?
The website is just Erik Allen Media, ErikAllen, erikallenmedia.com is the website. I'm probably most active on Instagram. So it's just Erik G. Allen. And I respond to every comment, every DM. So my podcast comes out every Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific. And so love to be able to connect with people. So if you have questions about podcasting or insurance, let me know. I'm always here to help out. And you can shoot me a DM through or contact us through the page on my website too. But man, it's just been a fun conversation today, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you being on. So definitely thank you, Erik. We really want to thank you for being on the Road Less Traveled show. We certainly appreciate that. And we want to remind our listeners of a couple things. First, please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we bring you more great content like our show today with Erik Allen. And next, we have a couple things from Park Capital Partners we want to remind everybody about. First, that's the Park Capital Partners Value Add Fund. That's a 506c fund open today to accredited investors. Please reach out and say hello, and we'll talk to you about that. Also, don't forget that we also have the Park Capital Partners Foundation, which is a 501(c) nonprofit that we created as another way that we give back. The way it works quickly is first, we fund their operations of it. So all the money donated goes to do its best work, which is to help others. Second, we donate personally. Third, we donate corporately. And finally, when investors invest with us in one of our projects, we make a donation to honor that investor to a pre-selected list of 15 different charities. So please reach out to say hello, parkcapitalpartnersllc.com, parkcapitalpartnersllc.com. And again, Erik, thanks for being on. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.